seconds. And if you want to rename yourself in the chat so that if I have to refer to you by name, I'm not going to accidentally say the wrong name, you can go ahead and rename yourselves in the chat if you like. But let's get the link for the live stream if you want to take a look over there. It's going to be at this link right here. Let me copy that and provide that to everybody in the chat. Okay, so it seems like we don't have so many students right now, so we're just going to wait. We're not going to wait. We're going to do a little warm-up exercise while we're waiting for some more students to straggle on in. And first of all, we're going to go over to our JS Linux machine. So JS Linux is a great little website that you can use to access a Linux machine on the web. And it is over at the link that I've just dropped in the chat. So if you want to go over to the link that I just provided to everybody in the chat, let's drop that link one more time. You can start practicing some of your Linux terminal commands after you've loaded up the page. So for instance, after we see that this is all loaded up over here, we can type ls to see what's in this directory. So ls, as you remember, is the list directory contents command. And we see that there's a bench.py file and a hello.c file. If we want to see that in a list format, we can also do ls with -l. So if we do that, we get some slightly different output. And we see that there's a list instead of just some file names over here. So inside of this list format, there's a bunch of useful information here, like the file owner and the last time the file was modified and some file permission stuff. You don't really need to know too much about that right now, but you do need to know that ls is going to get you the contents of your directory. So does anybody remember how to read files? So there was a certain 3-letter command that you can use to read files, and if you know it, please let us know in the chat. Okay, so we see that GX000 just subscribed on Twitch. Thank you very much, GX000. Much appreciated. And user D says it is the cat command. User GX00 says it's the vi command. That is not correct. But we might talk about the vi command a little bit later. So GX000, I'm teaching a class right now, so we're talking about Linux terminal stuff, the basics. So we can use the cat command to read a file. So for instance, there's this hello.c file over here. We can read that by doing cat space hello.c, and this is going to give us some code because this file has some code in here. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, this is a class. I'm teaching some students how to work with Linux. Okay, so let's get into the meat of today's class. So I've got a little presentation for everybody, and we're going to talk about some of the commands we used in the last class. So where were we? We're right here. So this is the second Intro to Linux OS Operations workshop, and in the previous workshop we learned about the following Linux commands. So first of all, we talked about the ls command. It lists the files and directories in the current directory, and it can be used with the -l argument to output in a list format and with the -a argument to include hidden files in the output. So we can also combine these two outputs together. So if we wanted to do -l and -a at the same time, we can do -la. So this is fairly common when we're working inside of Linux. The next thing we learned is about the cat command. So the cat command lists the contents of a file. So sometimes people who are using Linux will say that they're going to cat the file. We're going to cat this file. That just means we're going to read the file. So the name of the file to be read must be supplied as an argument to the command. So we've got cat space example.txt. So this is the type of syntax we would use when we use the cat command. So next we're talking about the cd command. So cd stands for change directory, and this is how we move around in the file system. The cd command changes the current directory to the one specified. The new directory must be supplied as an argument to the command. For instance, if we want to move into the downloads directory, we would do cd space downloads. Okay? So we also did some PWD. PWD stands for print working directory. The PWD command will output the name of the working directory, also known as the present working directory. And we use the file command, and the file command is going to identify the type of contents for a specified file. So for instance, you can use the file command on picture.jpg over here, and it's going to tell us that it's a picture file, probably. So if we were to go over to JS Linux, and remember, if you have a bunch of stuff on your screen and you want to clear the screen and go back up to the top of the terminal, you can use the clear command. So just type clear and hit enter, and that's going to do that. So if we were to use the file command on hello.c, this file right here, it's going to tell us that it's a C source file. So this is a handy command for getting back what the contents of the file might be. So let's continue where we left off. So what we're going to do is we're going to log into the picoctf website, and then we're going to start the following challenge. So first of all, what we want to do is we want to start our picoctf web shell. So if you remember, what you need to do is you need to sign in to the picoctf website first. And after you've signed into the picoctf website, you want to go to the practice page. So I think the website will take you to the practice page by default. But if not, you can always click on this button right here, and that's going to bring you to the practice page. So after that, you want to scroll down a little bit, and then you're going to see this button appear right here. So this is the button that opens up the web shell. And if you are, just so everybody is on the same page, if you are logged into the picoctf website and you're ready to open up your web shell, please type in the chat, "I'm in Pico," smiley face. If you need a little bit of time to log into the website, please let us know in chat, and we'll try to wait up for you as long as we can. All right, some people are reporting in. They're in Pico. Great, great. Great to hear. Okay. All right, so remember, after you're at the practice page, then what you want to do is you want to click on this gray button right here. It's labeled Web Shell, and it's on the right-hand side of the screen. So just click on that button, and then the picoctf Web Shell should open up. So you'll see that the Web Shell is open because you're going to see all this text right here with a bunch of emojis over here. What we want to do is we want to put this in its own browser tab. So we can do that by pressing this button right here. So there's the black bar at the top of the web shell, and then there's help, and then there's this button right here that looks like a box with an arrow pointing out. And the box is labeled Pop Out Web Shell Terminal. So we want to click on that, and then that's going to put the web shell in its own browser tab. So this might not work the first time. I know that I've had a little bit of difficulty opening it up in its own browser tab, but if it doesn't work and after maybe 10 seconds you don't see the web shell session start, you'll want to close the tab and then try the process one more time. So click on Web Shell, and then after that, click on Pop Out Web Shell Terminal, this button up here, and you might have to try it maybe 2 or 3 times, but one of those times it's going to work, and then that's what we want to do. So you're going to see all this text over here, and if you want to make the text bigger, you can do the Control, Shift, and plus all at the same time, and that's going to increase the size of the text. You can also do Control minus, and that's going to shrink the size of the text in the screen. Okay? All right, so if you've managed to put the web shell in its own browser tab and it's nice and big, please let us know in the chat. Please type something like, web shell up smiley face. So as usual, you can also clear off the screen by typing the clear command, and then use the ls command to see what's in your directory. So in your directory, it should only be the readme.txt file over here. But yeah, I see some people have their web shells up. That is great. Okay, so let's start the challenge. So the first challenge we're going to do is, where are we? Okay, this is session 2. And this is a GitHub page over here, and it has all the challenges we're going to do today. I'm going to share the link in the chat with everybody. And if you want, you can open up that web page that goes to GitHub, and there are going to be all the links to the challenges we're doing today, okay? So the first challenge we're going to do is the first find challenge. So you can either go over to the GitHub page and click on the link, or you can click on the link in the chat in Zoom or in YouTube or wherever you are. So after that, you want to go over to your picoctf webpage over here, and then you want to paste in the address and then navigate to this page. So when we go over to the first find challenge, the description over here is going to say unzip this archive and find the file named uber-secret.txt. So what we need to do in this challenge is we need to find a certain file inside of the big file here. So for this challenge, we have a zip file. So there's a zip file located right here in the challenge page. We're not going to click on it. We're not going to left click on it. We're going to right click on the file, and that's going to bring up this little window right here. And what we want to do is we want to select the copy link option. So it's going to be copy link or copy link address. We want to click on that. So first right click and then click on copy link or copy link address. And then we're going to go over to our web shell. So after you've done that, go to the web shell. If you don't interact with the web shell, it's going to log you out. You just need to click back into the web shell and then hit the enter key to reconnect to the web shell. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a directory to hold the files that we're going to be using for this challenge. So in Linux, we like to keep organized. So I'm going to teach you a command that we're going to do to create a directory inside of our home directory here. So the command is mkdir and then space, and then the name of the directory we want to create. So this challenge is called first find. So we're going to type in first find, all one word with no space. When we're naming directories and files inside of Linux, we don't want to include spaces in the file names. So we're just going to call this one first find, hit enter, and then when we do ls, we'll see that the first find directory has been created inside of our directory here. So we just need to use the cd command to enter that directory. So it's going to be cd space first find. And remember, you can just type the first couple of letters of the file name or directory name, and then hit the tab button to autocomplete the name. So after that, we're inside the first find directory, and now we're ready to download the file. So to download the file, we're going to use the wget command. So wget is a command in Linux we use to download files. It's wget and then space, and then we're going to paste in the file address that we copied earlier. So in order to do that, we just need to right click and then select paste. So that's going to insert the address for the file. After that, we're going to hit enter to download the file. And you should see output that looks kind of like this. When you do ls again, you're going to see that the files.zip file is in your current directory. All right, so we've done quite a bit. If the files.zip file is in your current directory, please let us know in the chat by typing we have the file. Smiley face. If you're having any trouble, please let us know at what step you are having trouble, and we'll try to help you out because we don't want to leave anybody behind. We want everybody to be able to finish these challenges together. Okay, we have the file. That's great. That's great. Okay. All right. So the next thing we're going to learn is we're going to learn about. So let's do a little recap of everything we've done up until this point, and then we'll continue. So I've got all these fancy slides. We talked about the make directory command, mkdir. When solving challenges in the web shell, it's useful to create new directories to work within them to keep the rest of the file system organized. We use the make directory command. So the make directory command is used to create new directories in the current directory. The syntax for the command is as follows: mkdir, and then space, and then the name of the directory you want to make. For example, mkdir space first find. So let's see, the whoami command is used to return the name of the user account currently being used. So we can actually do this really quick. So this is like a philosophical question. You just type in who am I, and then it's going to tell you the name of your current user. So in your case, it's going to be your username dash picoctf. So next we're going to be using the find command. But before we use the find command, let's unzip this file that we have in our directory. Okay. So in our current directory, we have files.zip. There's a command we need to use to unzip this file. So a zip file, a .zip file, is a file with a bunch of different files inside of it, and we can't work with the files inside unless we unzip the file first. So to do this, we use a command that's just called unzip, and then space, and then the name of the file that we're working with. So unzip space files.zip. And this command is going to unzip this files.zip file. So just type everything up like this and then hit enter. And that's going to unzip all of these files and directories over here. So there's a bunch of directories and directories within directories that are created after you unzip the file. So this is a bit cluttered, so I'm going to clear the screen. And we're going to find the file that we're looking for by using the find command inside of Linux. So at the challenge description over here, it says unzip this file and find the file named uber-secret.txt. So let's learn a little bit about the find command right now before we finish the challenge. Okay. So the find command is going to allow for a search of files and or directories in the file system, and it matches files in the output according to the criteria provided by the command arguments. So basically, the find command is going to look for files or directories depending on what criteria we give to it. So for example, the argument -name is going to search by the name of the file. So this is the find command we're going to use to find the file called uber-secret.txt. So the first part of the command is the command itself, find. The second part over here is the location to be searched. So the location in this case is the dot directory. So if you remember from last time, we talked a little bit about how in Linux the dot directory refers to the directory that we're in right now, the current directory. So dot means current directory. Number 3 is -name. That means that we're going to be searching by the file or directory name. And the fourth part of the command is the name of the file we want to find, which is uber-secret.txt. So let's go back to the web shell and let's use this command. So first of all, it's going to be find, and then it's going to be dot for the current directory, and then we're going to provide the -name argument, which says that we're going to be searching for the file by the name, and then space. And remember, the file that we're looking for, according to challenge, is uber-secret.txt. What we can do is we can highlight the name of this file over here, but make sure that we don't select the single quotes over here, and then copy that, and then go to the web shell, and then you can right click and paste, and then we have the name of the file that we're looking for over here. So it's find space dot space dash name space uber-secret.txt. So when we run this command, we're going to find that the file that we're looking for is at this location right here. So it's going to be in the files directory, in the adequate books directory, in the more books directory, in the secret directory, in the deeper secrets and deepest secrets directory, and then the file is right over here. So this is called a file path right here. So this is the file path that leads to the uber-secret.txt file. We want to read this file, but we also don't want to enter all of these directories over here using the cd command, because that's a big pain. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the cat command, but we're just going to supply the file path right here. So to supply the file path, just highlight the entire file path, including the dot, and then copy that. Then after that, right-click again and select paste. And that's going to paste in the file path right here. All right? So after that, we can just hit the enter command to read the file. And the file's contents are the flag right over here. So everybody, we can finish the challenge now. All we need to do is highlight the value of the flag right over here. This is sometimes called a flag string, and a text string is basically some text and some numbers. After you've highlighted it, right-click and select Copy, and then go over to the picoctf challenge page. So in the challenge page at the bottom, there's the flag submission field right here. Click into that, and then you can use the Control-V keyboard shortcut to paste in the flag. You can also do right-click and select Paste to paste in the flag, and then click on Submit Flag, and then we're finished. Okay, so everybody, if you managed to finish that challenge, please type in the chat, first found smiley face. So if you have any questions about any of the commands we were using or any of the concepts we were talking about, please let us know, because I certainly don't want people to be confused. If you weren't able to finish the challenge, please let us know at what point you were having trouble, and we'll try to help you out, okay? All right, so let's see. So we're talking about find. So next we're going to talk about the rm command. So the rm command is going to delete files or directories, and to keep our picoctf web shell home directory clean, and because we're only allowed a certain amount of disk space, we should delete our challenge directories after we're done solving the challenge. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the rm command to delete the directories after we're finished, okay? So the syntax for the rm command are as follows: rm space file name. But since we're deleting a directory, we also have to use the -r flag for this command. Deleting directories requires the use of the -r flag. For example, rm space -r space first find. So we can't actually delete a directory that we're currently in. So over at the web shell, we're going to back out of this directory. So we're currently in the first find directory. We're going to back out with the following command. It's going to be cd and then just hit enter after CD. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring us back to our home directory. So our home directory is the directory that we're in when we log in. If you do ls after this command, you're going to see that the first find directory is here. We're going to delete it. So we're going to delete it with the rm command, rm space -r, and -r stands for recursive. It basically means that we're going to delete anything inside of whatever, if there's anything inside of the thing that we're deleting, we're also going to delete that. And then we're going to do space, and then we're going to provide the name of the directory, which is first find. So rm space -r space first find. So after we run that command, we're going to see that the first find directory is no longer here because we deleted it. Okay, so if you're having any troubles, once again, if you're having any troubles, please let us know. But otherwise, we're going to move on. So we're going to do another challenge, and we're going to learn about another useful Linux command with the first grep challenge. So first grep, the challenge is located over here. And let me grab that link for everybody. So I'm just pasting it into everybody in the chat. And if you want to access the challenge, you can go ahead and use that link. Okay, so this is the challenge called first grep. So the challenge description says, can you find the flag in file? This would be really tedious to look through manually. Something tells me there's a better way. So what we're going to do, like the other file, is we're going to copy the link for the file that we need to use to solve the challenge. So we're going to highlight the link over here, and then we're going to right click and then select copy link. So for some of the web browsers, it's going to be called copy link address, but either way, you want to click on that option and then go over to the web shell. So this is the challenge called first grep. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another directory to work inside of. So I'm going to clear this off, and then we're going to use the mkdir command again, and we're going to specify that this is a directory called first grep. Remember, we want to keep everything one word. We can't use spaces, because if we use spaces, then it can get messy, and we don't want it to be messy. So mkdir space first grep. And then we're going to enter the directory by doing cd space first grep. And then once we're inside the directory, we can download the file. So to download the file, it's wget and then space. And then we're going to paste in the link to the file. So wget space, right click, select paste, and then the link address is pasted in. After that, hit enter, and that's going to download the file. We can double check that the file is here by doing the ls command. And then we should see that the file, kind of confusing, is in the directory. If you manage to successfully download the file, please let us know in the chat by typing, I got the file, smiley face. All right, some people are reporting that they got the file. That's great to see. So remember, we can read the file by using the cat command. So if we use the cat command with this file, we're going to see that it's filled with a lot of junk, and we can't necessarily find the flag in here. So just wondering right now, does anybody remember what all of the flags for picoctf have in common? They have a certain text a certain word or a certain two words that are at the beginning of all the flags. What is that text? All right, somebody has answered in the chat, and it is the word Pico. So all of the flags in Pico CTF start with the word Pico CTF. So if we were able to pick out this word inside of the output of that file, then we could find the flag. So we can do that with the grep command. So let's learn about the grep command now. So the grep command, it searches within the contents of files for specified strings. So strings are little pieces of text. It is very commonly used to pick out specific words or phrases. For example, we're going to be using the grep command, and this is the syntax we use to perform the command. So the first part of the command, number one, is the command itself. So we use grep, and then number two is the pattern we're going to search for in the file or the directory. We're going to look for the pattern Pico, because all the Pico CTF flags start with the word Pico. And number three, this last part, is the file to be searched, which is the file called file. Okay, so let's do that. So over back at our web shell, we've got our file over here, and we're going to use the grep command. So the first thing is grep, and then space, and then the pattern we're looking for, which is Pico, and then space again. And then we're going to specify the file that we want to look inside, which is this file called file over here. All right, so after that, we're going to run the command, and then it gets the exact line that has the word Pico in it. So this is the flag right here. The flag is Pico CTF grep is good to find things, and then some random numbers. So these random numbers over here are different for every user. So you can't necessarily use this flag because each user is going to have their own flag. So what you want to do is you want to highlight the contents of your flag and then select copy, and then go back to the Pico CTF challenge page. So inside of, all right, so one user says that they got stuck and can't go back to the home directory. Okay, so let me explain after we paste in this flag. So in this field here, paste in the flag, click on submit flag, and you should be finished. But for the person who is stuck over at the web shell, what I want you to do is I want you to do cd and then by itself. So the cd command by itself, and then hit enter. And then when you do pwd after that, it should say /home/your username -picoctf. So please let us know if you're able to get back to the home directory. And remember, if for some reason your web shell becomes stuck, you can use the Control-C keyboard shortcut to cancel out of a program or a command. So it's going to be Control and the C button, and you should see output like this when you do it. Okay? So if that doesn't get you unstuck, please let us know. All right, so everybody, if you manage to finish the challenge by copying the flag and then submitting it to the challenge page over here, please let us know by typing in the chat, I grepped it. And once again, because we want to be clean, we want to keep our home directory nice and clean, we're going to use the rm command to delete this directory first grep after we finish the challenge. So after we finish the challenge, you want to do cd by itself and then hit enter, and then it's going to bring you to your home directory. After that, print pwd. You should see that you're in home / your username picoctf. And when you do ls, you're going to see that the first grep directory is here. And we want to delete it because we're finished with this challenge. So we can do rm -r space and then first grep. So after you run this command, you're going to see that the first grep directory is no longer here when you use the ls command. Okay, so let's we're going to do one more challenge to test the skills that we've learned so far today. Next, we're going to solve another picoctf challenge to learn more Linux skills. This one is called, Big Zip. We've already done Big Zip. No, wait, we didn't do Big Zip. We did first find. We're going to do the Big Zip challenge now. All right? So the challenge is located over here. And over on the picoctf website, you can just paste in this over here, and that's going to lead to the Big Zip challenge. The Big Zip challenge says unzip this archive and find the flag. And then there's a link to the Big Zip file. So you just need to highlight the link one more time, right-click, select Copy Link or Copy Link Address, and then go over to the web shell. So in the web shell, we're going to make another directory. So it's going to be mkdir space and then Big Zip, because that's the challenge name. So just hit enter. Next, we're going to enter the directory cd space Big Zip. And now we're in the Big Zip directory. So now we're going to download the file with wget one more time. wget space and then right click, select paste, and that's going to paste in the file address. Hit enter. That's going to download the file. All right, so everybody, if you've downloaded the file and you're ready to start the challenge, please type in the chat. I've got the zip file. Smiley face. Okay, great. All right, so we're going to unzip this file. Remember that, so we've already unzipped a file once in this session, but remember that the command we use is unzip and then space, and then the name of the file over here. So you can just type bi, and because we've got the tab to autocomplete the name of the file, we can just hit the tab key, and that's going to autocomplete the name of the file. Very convenient. So just hit enter after that, and that's going to unzip a lot of files. So this is a lot of files and a lot of directories inside of this zip file. So if we wanted to look through all of these directories over here, it would take a really long time, and we don't have the time to do that. So instead, we're going to use some of the commands that we use today to get the flag. So the challenge, it just says unzip this archive and find the flag. So we learned, oh, that's not it. So we learned two commands today. We learned the find command, and we learned the grep command. So which command do you think we should look for? Which command do you think we should use to look for the flag? So we don't know the name of the flag, but we do know what is inside of we do know what word we're looking for when we're looking for the flag. What word are we looking for? Does anybody remember? All right, user D says it is Pico. That's correct. So we know that there are all these files and all these directories, and we have to look for the pattern Pico. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a different version of the grep command to look for the flag. So let me explain. So we're talking about running the grep command recursively. So recursively just means that if there are objects inside of objects, we're going to look inside of each one of those objects. Grep can also be used to search inside of all files in a directory and all directories in those directories. This is called recursion. We just need to use the -r flag. So the command is grep and then space and then -r and then pico and then space and then the directory we're looking inside of, which is the dot directory. Remember, dot means the current directory. So this is going to look in the current directory and all directories underneath this directory for the pattern pico. So let's do this. So this is just going to be grep and then -r and then the pattern we're looking for, which is pico, and then the directory we're looking inside of, which is the dot directory. Remember, dot means the current directory. So grep space -r space pico space dot. When we run this, it's going to identify which file has the pattern. So this one over here, it returns this file path over here and the flag over here. So the flag is this. It is on the same line as this other information over here. Information on the record will last a billion years, something, 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 and then the flag. So we can also read this file by itself. So we can copy the file path, just highlight it, select copy, and we can just use the cat command to read this. We don't need to, but just remember that you can always, whenever you see a file path, you can always copy and paste it. So if we were to read this, it just says information on the record will last a billion years, and then this flag right over here. So to finish the challenge, we're going to highlight the flag string. So it doesn't matter. It's okay if you're highlighting across multiple lines. That's fine. So just highlight the flag value, right-click, select copy, and then go over to the challenge description. In the flag submission field, click into the field and then paste in the flag. Then click on Submit Flag. All right, you should be done. If you managed to finish the challenge, please let us know by typing in big zip zipped. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to do one last challenge to test a few of the different skills we've learned in Linux so far, okay? So over here, we're going to take on the Magikarp Ground Mission Challenge. So we're going to wrap up by solving a challenge that will test our file system navigation skills. We're going to be using the ls command and the cd command, and we're going to be solving this Pokemon-themed challenge called Magikarp Ground Mission. So it's going to be over at this link. And over at picoctf, we're going to paste in the challenge, and then we're going to see the challenge over here. So everybody, before we start this mission, let's do a little bit of cleanup over at our web shell because we don't want to leave a dirty web shell. We want to clean up after ourselves. So over at the web shell, we're going to back out, cd by itself, hit enter, and then we see that the big zip directory is here. We want to delete that. So remember, it's rm space -r, and then the name of the directory, which is big zip. Hit enter, and that's going to delete the directory. Okay, so now we're ready to do the challenge. So the challenge is called Magikarp Grand Mission, and the description says, do you know how to move between directories and read files in the shell? Start the container, SSH to it, and then ls once connected to begin. So log in via SSH as CTF player with the password, this password right here. Additional details will be available after launching your challenge instance. So what we're doing in this challenge is we're going to connect to a remote server from our web shell using the SSH program. So remember, in the last session, we used SSH to get a flag, but this time we're actually going to log into a remote server. So to start the challenge, we need to click on this blue button right here called Launch Instance. So click on that, and then after a couple of seconds, the server for this challenge is going to start up. So you're going to see this new information here. It says challenge endpoint, and then very conveniently, they're going to give us the actual SSH command to log in. So we don't have to piece together the command. We just have to go over to this box and highlight everything from SSH until the end of this number over here. So highlight this all and then copy it. Right click, select copy, and then go over to the web shell. In the web shell, we're going to right click and select paste. And this is the SSH command that's going to let us log in. So we're logging in as the CTF-player user to this server right here, venus.picoctf.net. So after you've pasted in the SSH command, hit enter. And then it's going to ask you, are you sure you want to continue connecting? Type yes, and then hit enter. And then it's going to ask for the password. So we're going to go back to the challenge page, and in the challenge description, they have the password right here. Make sure when you're highlighting the password that you don't highlight the backtick symbols over here. Just highlight everything in the middle. Select copy, and then go over to back to the web shell, paste in the password, and then hit enter. Okay, so you should see this prompt right here, ctf-player at pico-chal. Okay, so once you're in, you can type ls, and then you should see that in your current directory is 1 out of 3.flag.txt and instructions to 2 of 3.txt. So if you've logged in successfully, please type a logged in the chat with some smiley faces, if you please. Thank you very much. All right, so this challenge is going to involve us collecting 3 parts of the flag in different directories. So the first thing we need to do is we need to read this file right here, 1 of 3.flag.txt. So cat space, and then just type 1 and hit tab, and it should autocomplete the file name. So when we read the file, we're going to get the first part of the flag. So we're going to highlight this first part of the flag, and remember that there's a character, there's this underscore character after the H. Don't forget to highlight that. And then select copy. Then go back to the challenge description. In the flag submission field, click in, and then paste the first part of the flag. So we're going to use this over here to keep track of the parts of the flag. So after we pasted in this first part of the flag, we're going to go back to the web shell. So in the web shell, there's this instructions to 203.txt. Okay. So if you want, you can try doing this on your own, and you can try to get the flag before I finish telling you how to get the flag, and that is a test of to see if you know what you're doing inside of the Linux environment. Okay. So next we want to cat out these instructions. Cat instructions to 203.txt. Hit enter. And then it says, next, go to the root of all things, more succinctly, /. So this is the name of the directory that we need to go to. So okay, let me explain what these directories are. So we've got a presentation over here. So we've got the home directory. So each user on a Linux system has a space where they can store all of their personal files. It's located at /home/username. For example, /home/the Shy Hat. And we also have the top level directory. The top level directory in a Linux system is the / directory, where we can find all of the other directories and files in the system. It can also be called the root directory, which can be confusing since there's another directory called the root directory. So let's go to that directory. In the web shell, we're going to cd space to /. So after that, if we do pwd to get the current directory, we should see that we're in the / directory. And if we do ls to take a look at what's in the directory, we should see all of our usual Linux directories in here, but there are also a couple of files. There's this 2of3flag.txt and the instructions to 3of3.txt files. So we're going to read these files. So we're going to cat out 2of3.flag.txt, which is this. And like the other flag piece, we're going to highlight it and then copy it. Then go over to the challenge page, and we're going to paste in the second part over here. So just click into it, select paste, and then our second part has been added to the first part. Back at the web shell, there's the instructions to 3of3.txt file here. So we're going to read that. And then the file has inside of it, lastly, CTF player, go home, more succinctly, this symbol right here, which is called a tilde. So remember what I taught you about going to the home directory? Can you tell me how you go to the home directory in Linux? Does anybody remember how to do it? So to go to the home directory in Linux, you can do cd by itself, but you could also do cd and then you can use the tilde symbol over here. So the tilde symbol is located just above the tab key on most keyboards, and it's the shifted version. So if you do the key by without the shift, it's going to be the back tick over here, but if you do it with the shift, it's going to be the tilde. So most of the time you don't need to keep track of this because we can just do cd by itself, then hit enter. When we do pwd, it should say that we're in /home/ctf player. And I'm going to clear this off. If we take a look inside over here, there are two things in here. There's the drop-in directory, and there's the 3of3flag.txt file. So let's collect this last flag file over here, cat 3of3.flag.txt. Okay, and this is the last part of the flag. So we can just highlight this and then copy it. Then go over to the challenge page. In the challenge page, we've got our first two parts of the flag, and we're going to paste in the third part. All right, and now we have three parts of the flag. It is now complete. So we can click on Submit Flag. And that should finish the challenge. Sometimes when you click on a button in PicoCTF, it doesn't go through, so you can try it again. Okay, and we can try it again. All right, this time it worked. All right, so if you were able to finish the Magikarp ground mission file, sorry, the Magikarp ground mission challenge, please type in the chat, I choose you, Magikarp, smiley face. So if you take a look at the web shell now, you should see that your connection to the server that you logged into via SSH is now closed. All right, so we see that some people have finished the challenges. Great to see. If for some reason you were having some trouble, please let us know where you encountered your difficulties, and we'll try to catch you back up. All right, so before we finish today's session, let's take a look at a review of all the commands that we learned today, okay? So we took a look at the find command. The find command is used to search for files on the system. It can be used with many different arguments and flags to refine the search parameters. So if we're over at JS Linux, so say that we're at JS Linux and we want to find all of the files that belong to the root user. So we're the root user here. We would do find space and then user root and then hit enter. It's going to find a lot of files because a lot of the files in the Linux system are owned by the root user. But let's quit out of that. Okay. So we also talked briefly about the whoami command. It is used to return the name of the user account currently being used. The rm command is used to delete files or directories, but deleting directories requires the use of the -r flag, which, for example, rm space -r space, the name of the directory you want to delete. We talked about the grep command. It searches within the contents of files for specific strings. It's very commonly used to pick out specific words or phrases. So if you want to see something that is not very useful for the grep command, you can go over to JS Linux, and we can grep R for the pattern the inside of the current directory, actually inside of all the directories. So it's going to look for this word inside of all of the files in the file system. It's going to be a lot of stuff. Oh. So because the word the appears in a lot of these files, but it finds them all because that's what the grep command does. It finds little pieces of text. Okay? So what's next? In the next HackerFrogs After School Linux OS workshop, we're going to keep learning more about the Linux OS using the PicoCTF platform. So we've got more commands to learn and more challenges to finish, and we're going to be doing the next session on Friday. So let's see, that's going to be Friday, October the 11th, and it's going to be at the same time. Everybody, I hope to see you there, and if you don't have any more questions, if you don't have any questions about what we learned today, you can go ahead and leave the call. But if you want me to help you out with something that you didn't understand, or for some reason you have some other questions, please stick around and let us know in the Zoom chat, and I'll try to answer your questions as best as I can. In the meantime, for the live stream, we're going to go to a Be Right Back screen. Hey everybody, we're back. All right, so did you miss me? I hope so. Anyways, we're going to be, so let's see, we've got another class going on in about an hour or so, but until then, we've got a little bit of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a walkthrough for one of the new machines that we recently completed over at the VulnyX website. So the VulnyX website is located just over here. I will provide the link in the chat. And we just finished our class. Let's celebrate by giving a little video redeem. And this is the bully bird. It is one bird bullying another, but they're both so cute. Take a look. All right, so just in case you were wondering, those are Stellar Jays, and Stellar Jays are probably one of my favorite birds. They come around every day over to my bird feeder, and they eat up, and they are great. Okay, so VulnyX or VulnyX, I guess, is this website right over here. I provide the link in chat, and it's another website where you can download virtual machines and then hack against them. And we recently finished this machine over at the bottom here, or near the bottom. It's called Fing, F-I-N-G. So let's see. I think I can also change my overlays. because the next class is going to be doing Linux OS operation session 5. So I'm just going to change that. And so we just finished this machine over here called Fing. So if you take a look at the website, this machine is going to be located at the number 9 spot over here. And there is also a card for this machine, and as well as a download link. So what you do to access this machine is you download it, and then you install the virtual machine to your virtual machine manager software, such as VirtualBox, and then you can deploy this on your network along with whatever machine you're going to be using to attack it. So maybe something like Kali Linux, which is what we have over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up the machine. So let's see, start the machine. And you're going to see that after you start the machine over here, and after the machine has finished initializing, this machine conveniently gives you the IP address that it's been assigned. So if you, for some reason, you don't see, the IP address is included over here along with the VM name. So I don't need to go chasing it down inside of my network. So I'm going to start a walkthrough for this machine. And if you have any questions, please let us know in the chat. I'm going to create some tabs for us to work inside of. I generally like to work inside of a bunch of different terminal tabs when I'm doing my CTF box work. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to scan the system. So we know the system is at 10.0.2.24. So I'm going to run an mmaps. First of all, let's go into my temporary directory. And then I'm going to run an mmap scan, very verbose, 4 threads, against all ports at this IP address. So very verbose and all ports -p dash, and with 4 threads -t4. We run that. And then it finds a few different ports. So these are the ports available on the system. It's port 22, there's port 80, and there's port 79. So among these ports, port 79 is a big outlier because we don't very often see this service. And this is the finger service. So what is the finger service, you might ask? So let's take a look at Wikipedia. And let's make this nice and big. So in computer networking, actually, you know what? ChatGPT actually gives us a better explanation as to what the finger service is. So let me ask ChatGPT, what is the Unix/Linux finger networking service? Oh, it's thinking. Okay, so the summary is the finger service in Unix or Linux is an older networking protocol and utility that provides information about system users. The finger command can be used to query user information such as login name, real name, terminal name, idle time, login time, and even more detailed information about users like their home directory shell and last login. So this is a networking service that can give us a lot of information about users, but More importantly, this due to the potential for revealing too much information about users, like real names, home directories, and login times, the finger service is often disabled on modern systems. Exposing such information could be exploited by attackers for social engineering or targeted attacks. Additionally, it is rarely used nowadays in modern network environments, and many Linux distributions no longer install the finger service by default. So, since the finger service on this server is active, this is probably the way we attack the system. So if we go over to our terminal over here, did I delete? We ran this command and then we got this output over here. And we see that the finger service is up. So what we need to do is we need to do a second Nmap scan that includes the available ports. So this is something I like to do. I like to run a cycle of Nmap just to get the open ports, and then I run it again with the following options enabled. So it's -s capital C and -s capital V. So this is going to run common scripts against all of the services that we found, as well as to try to get the version information. And I'll usually output this to a file called nmap.txt. So we can run this. Okay, so it's finished running. We see the nmap.txt file in here. So let's cat it out. So it got the following information. So it's got port 22, and this is a typical SSH service, and port 79, which is finger. It says no one logged in, okay, and port 80, which is a default Apache 2 Debian page. So if we were to take a look at the web page associated with this server over here, and we can do so from here, 10.0.2.24 HTTP. We'll see that this is just the Apache 2 Debian default page. So this is not something we need to investigate to attack the system. If you run GoBuster or Dirbuster and try to enumerate for additional files or additional directories, you won't find anything. So this is definitely not the way we need to attack this. So what we need to do is we need to attack finger. So what I like to do when I encounter new services that I haven't seen before is I like to go over to HackTricks. So HackTricks is a website with a bunch of different information about hacking different systems. HackTricks. So the URL is book.hacktricks.xyz. And on this page, you can search for whatever technology you want to hack against. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to type in the word finger, hit enter. And there's an article over here called 79 Pen Testing Finger. So we can click on it. And then we can get the basic info over here. So it says the finger program service is used for retrieving details about computer users. Typically, the information provided includes the user's login name, full name, and in some cases, additional details. These extra details can encompass the office location and phone number if available, the time the user logged in, the period of inactivity, idle time, the last instance mail was read by the user, and the contents of the user's plan and project files. So what we're going to do is we can do some basic banner grabbing and basic connection. So the interesting thing is that we can use netcat to connect to the service. So if we were to go to our terminal and paste in this command over here, we need to provide the name of the IP address, which is this one right here. It's going to say finger open. All right. And then what we can do from there is just type in the word root to see if it has a root user. So it gives us the information about the root user. The name is root, the shell is bin bash, the home directory is root, and the last login was this date over here. So this finger service can be used to enumerate usernames, and that's what we're going to be doing to attack the system. So over at the Hacktricks website over here, if we go down here, it says alternatively you can use finger-user-enum from Pentest Monkey, and some examples over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the Pentest Monkey website where they have the finger-user.enum program. And it says here, username guessing tool primarily for use against the default Solaris finger service. Also supports relaying of queries through another finger user. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be downloading this program. So to download the program, we just need to get the link, which is on the page. We're going to copy the link. And then we're going to be taking a look at the basic usage. So now that we've now that we've copied the link, we're going to go over to our terminal, and we're in our TMP directory. What we're going to do is we're going to use wget to download the file. And we'll see that the file is in this gzip archive over here. So what we need to do is we need to use gunzip to unzip this file. After we've done that, we'll see that there is now a tar file. So inside of the gunzip file, there was the gzip file rather, there was a tar file. So we need to do the tar command with -xvf to untar this file. So after we've run that, we see that this directory is created, finger user enum 1.0, as well as these files over here. So we're going to enter that directory. And then we see that the script is over here. So the script is a Perl script, and if you're using Kali Linux, then Perl is installed on the system by default. So you should be able to use Perl to run this script. So let's take a look at the how we use this program over here. So finger user enum simply needs to be passed a list of users and at least one target running a finger service. So let's make this nice and big so that we can read it. So the usage is finger-user-enum.pl options -u for username or -t for host, and we can add some additional options over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to point out the way that I used the command over here. So it's going to be Perl and then the name of the script, which is finger user enum, and I'm going to run it in verbose mode, so -v, and I'm going to use a user list over here, -U, and this is a list that's installed on Kali by default from the seclists project. It is 10 million usernames.txt. So after this, we provide the IP address of the server, which is -t, and then the IP address. What I'm going to do is I'm going to redirect the output to this file over here called userenum.txt. One other thing that we need to do to modify this command is to run it with -m1. And this means that it's only going to run one query at a time. And this is important because on this server, if you try to run too many requests with finger at the same time, it's going to block your IP. Or actually, it's not going to block your IP. It's going to refuse connections, and then it's going to shut down the port. So we need to make sure that we're going nice and slow when we run this username enumeration. Okay, so with all of that said, let's run this command. And it's going to, because we're redirecting the output, it's going to run in the background. So we can go to another tab, then go to the temporary directory, and we'll see that this user enum.txt file is here. We can just cat out that file, and we can see that this is the output of the script. So it tells us all the information over here. We're only working with one worker process, and we've got a lot of usernames. So this is 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. So there's 8 million usernames over here. And so this is actually going to take a long time to finish. So for each one of these, it's going to do no such user, no such user, and it's just going to keep on going until it finds valid users. So if we were to run it again until we actually find a valid user early on over here, and there is the mail user over here. It's got a directory var mail and a shell user something something. What we're going to do is we're going to filter out the output of this file by grepping for the pattern right over here /home. So we're only going to look for users that have a home directory, and so far we haven't found any users with a home directory, but later on we will. So we also found the root user over here. They've got a shell. They've got So we just need to wait for this script to do its to work its magic, and then we'll come back to it in a little bit. In the meantime, we can read up a little bit on Finger over here. And the security concerns with this service. So supplying such detailed information such as email addresses and full names was considered acceptable and convenient in the early days of networking, but later was considered questionable for privacy and security reasons. Finger information has been used by hackers as a way to initiate a social engineering attack on a company's computer security system. By using a Finger client to get a list of companies' employee names, email addresses, phone numbers, and so on, a hacker can call or email someone at the company requesting information while posing as another employee. The Finger daemon has had several exploitable security holes crackers have used to break into systems. For example, in 1988, the Morris worm exploited an overflow vulnerability in FingerD, among others, to spread. For these reasons, by the late 1990s, the vast majority of sites on the internet no longer offered the service. Okay, so we're going to go back and see if we got any valid usernames from the Finger service. So just down over here, we're going to search for any users we might have found that have a home directory with this pattern over here. And we found one. So there's this Adam user over here, and that they have a home directory, which means that they are a legitimate user on the system. And we can use this to perform a brute force attack on the system, searching for Adam's valid password. So the reason we're doing this is because we don't have any other avenues of enumeration right now. Doing a brute force attack on SSH is probably something you don't want to do unless you have nothing else to try, because there are very often security measures in place to ban servers that are trying to access SSH, and the SSH service receives too many failed logins from the same IP in a short amount of time. So In order to do this brute force attack, we're going to be using Hydra. So the Hydra program it conducts online brute forcing attacks, and it usually takes a password list. In this case, we usually like to use rocku.txt, which is a list of passwords that was leaked out maybe a long time ago, and it has several million different passwords. And so the syntax for using Hydra is as follows. So it's going to be Hydra and then -l Adam, which is the name of the user we're trying to brute force, and then -P, and then provide the file path to the password list that we're using, which is rocku.txt. On Kali Linux, it's located at user share word lists rocku.txt. We have to specify the service that we're attacking, which is SSH :/ and then the IP address. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to supply a number of threads over here, and the more threads, the faster it's going to go. Generally, we don't want to attack SSH very quickly, because if the faster we send threads at the SSH service, the faster it would ban us if the server was going to ban you. But in this case, there are no SSH protections, so we can go as fast as we want. So we can just run this command, and then after a little bit, it's going to return the password of the Atom user. So just in case you were wondering, if you're using Kali Linux, Hydra is going to be installed on default configurations of Kali Linux, so you don't have to worry about installing it if you're using Kali Linux as your attacking machine. So we see here that it's attacking SSH at this IP address at this port, which is port 22, the default one for SSH. We see here that we're running Hydra at the maximum speed, which is 64 threads, and the status here says that it does 392 different login attempts per minute, and it's going to take about an hour to finish the entire password list. So while we're waiting, let's do another fun video redeem. This is our default rallying cry, which is Hack the Planet. And it's from the movie Hackers, which is very campy, but a lot of people got their start, got their initial interest in hacking by watching this movie.
Hack the planet! Hack the planet! Shut up and get in.
So while we're waiting, let's ask ChatGPT about the rocku password list. What is the rocku.txt password list? So the rocku.txt password list is one of the most widely used and well-known password dictionaries in cybersecurity, particularly in brute force attacks and password cracking exercises. It is commonly used in capture the flag CTF competitions and security testing tools like Hydra, John the Ripper, and Hashcat. So rocku.txt, this list originates from a data breach in 2009 when the website Rocku was hacked. During this breach, over 32 million user passwords were exposed in plain text due to poor storage practices. That is, the passwords were stored unencrypted. This incident resulted in the creation of the rocku.txt file, which contains a list of the passwords leaked from the breach. So this is the origin of the rocku.txt file. So it actually originates from much earlier on than I expected. But let's go back and see if we've cracked that password yet. All right, so Hydra has finished running, and it was able to find this information over here. So on this host, with this login name, Adam, it found this password, passion. So it tried this against all of the different passwords in the rocku.txt list. It found this password, passion. So what we're going to do is we're going to use SSH to log in as Adam using this password over here, passion. So let's do that. So SSH, Adam, and then we're going to try to log in. It's going to ask us for the password. The password is passion, Passion, and we are now in. All right. So the first thing I like to do after arriving on a new server is I like to do sudo -l to see if the current user has any sudo permissions on the system. And we see that this text in Spanish over here is orden no encontrado. I think that means file not found or command not found. Command not found, I think. Orden is command. So this system does not have a sudo command on it, which means that we're going to have to try some other method for privilege escalation. So we also see the user.txt file over here, and just to prove that we can read it, we can see here that we are the Adam user, and the Adam user has read access to the user.txt file. Out of respect for the VulnyX website, they don't want people to reveal flag contents on write-ups, so we're not going to do that. So what we're going to do next is we're going to look for super switch user SUID binary files. So we can do so with the following command. We can look for binaries that have elevated privileges, and this is the command we would look to do that. The command is find /-perm for permissions, and it's u equals s. So this is looking for files with the SUID ID bit set, and we're looking for files, and everything that we can't read we're going to send to devnull. So when we do so, we see this list over here. Most of these files over here are legitimate SUID ID binaries, but there's one that is out of place. So in these cases, what we can do is we can copy this list of binaries, and we can ask ChatGPT what it thinks about this list. So we've got ChatGPT over here. I'm going to ask it the question, this is a list of SUID binaries from a Linux server in a CTF challenge. Are any of them unusual? And then we can paste in the list and ask for an answer. So it says here that there is an unusual SUID binary over here, and it's /user/bin/doas. So it says here that doas is a lightweight alternative to sudo, which allows users to execute commands as another user. It is most commonly found in OpenBSD systems, but can also be installed on Linux distributions. If this binary is present and switch user ID or super user ID, it can be misconfigured and offer an unintended way to escalate privileges if it is not properly restricted by its configuration file, which is located at /etc/doas.conf. All right. So in a CTF context, doas is worth testing as it could provide a means to execute commands as another user, potentially root, depending on its configuration. So what we're going to do is we're going to check this out. So we can go over to back to here, and we can take a look at the etc slash doas.conf file over here. So this is going to tell us what exactly is the configuration for the doas file. We see here that permit with no password, keep the environment, the user's atom that can operate as root when it's running the command user bin find. So that essentially means that the atom user can run the find command on the system as root. So that means that we can potentially do some privilege escalation. So we can look up how to do that privilege escalation over at a website that I commonly use, which is called gtfobins.github.io. And this is a website where we can look up different commands inside of Linux, and it'll tell us how to do privilege escalation using those binaries. So I'm going to search for the find binary, and because we can use find basically as with sudo, which is as the root user, we're going to click on that, and in this section it says if the binary is allowed to run as superuser by sudo, it does not drop the elevated privileges and may be used to access the file system, escalate, or maintain privileged access. So the interesting thing about the find command is that it can run other commands in its execution. And in this case, we're going to run find, and then we're going to also run bin sh. So we're going to open a shell while we're using the find command, which allows us to run to open up a root shell. So let's do that. So the syntax for using the doas command is as follows. So it's doas and then space and then -u for user. We're going to run it as root, and we're going to run it on this binary user bin/find. We're going to run it in the current directory. We're going to execute the following command, bin-sh, which is going to open up the root shell. We're going to end that command, and we're going to issue the quit flag. All right, so when we run this command, doas is going to let us run as root the find binary, and when we run the find binary, we're going to execute /bin/sh, which opens up the root shell. So when we run this, we now see a different prompt. If we ask, who am I? It says, we are root. So we have now rooted the system. If we go over to the root directory, we see that the root file is in here. Because we are root, and root has read access to this file, then we see that we have rooted the system. So I'm not going to read the root.txt file out of respect for the organizers over at the VulnyX website who have requested that we did not do so in our write-ups, but we are now finished. So what did we see on this system? So in this system, they were using a couple of unusual binaries or services. The first of which was the finger service, which is very often, which is not very often used, but was very often used on older systems and in the past. And we use that to compromise the username, and then through compromising the username, Adam in this case, we were able to brute force the SSH password for Adam using the Hydra tool. And after login, we found that the doas binary was being used, and doas is an alternative to sudo, and we were able to use that command to compromise the system. So if you enjoyed that, thank you very much. If you enjoyed that this walkthrough of the system, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. All right, so Now that we've finished with this exercise, we can get out of here. And I'm going to shut down the FING. Whoops. That's not the box. This is the box. I'm going to shut this down. And we have another 20 minutes until the next class starts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up another box, and let's see what I have in my VM list. So I've got shock, I've got flour, I've got. Let's see if we can get another box from. Let's see. Let's say we do. So I think I downloaded another box from VulnyX over here, and I think I downloaded this one right here called Ready. So this isn't necessarily ready to. It's not necessarily ready, strangely enough. So what we're going to do is I'm going to initialize that VM on my system, and let's see if we can do some initial scans against it while we're waiting for the next class to start. So let's see, I'm going to import an appliance. And in the meantime, let's start up some music. Oh, that's really loud. Let's make that softer. Okay, so we are looking at the Vulny machines. So this one's called Ready. Let's import that. Hopefully it doesn't affect my system performance over here. Okay, that was really quick. So I'm going to adjust the settings on the VM. Okay, now I'm going to start up the system. So the system's called Ready. And we've got our, whoops. All right, so the IP address is going to be at 10.0.2.26. This is a very convenient system because it tells you what the IP address is on the network. But if it didn't, then we could have probably used Nmap to find the system on a network. Anyways, let's do some initial scans against the machine. So we've got all this stuff over here. Let's get rid of this this finger stuff. Okay, we also have this Nmap. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of the user enum. Okay, so let's run our initial Nmap scan against 26. And we're going to run it against all ports and not get the system information and the version information. Okay, so hopefully this goes nice and fast. It's on our network, so it should go pretty quick. So we found quite a few, 4 ports. So you got port 22, port 80, port 8080, and port 6379. All right, so we've got Redis. So Redis is a in-memory database service, which I've seen before. And there's also port 8080, which is an HTTP proxy. Let's check it out. So first of all, we've got port 80 and port 8080. We could probably run some Nikto scans against those 2 ports. So what we're going to do is we're going to run Nikto against the default HTTP port, and then We're also going to run it against port 8080. So Nikto is a web app vulnerability scanner, and it can be used to reveal usually low-hanging fruit as far as security flaws are concerned. But because it can find low-hanging fruit, I like to run this every time I encounter web servers on a CTF box like this. So it didn't necessarily find anything super relevant over here. What we can also do is we can do some manual enumeration for this. So we're going to go over to (10.02.26). Slap the HTTP in front of that. Okay, so this is a Debian default page. So I might do some GoBuster to see if there's anything in here. Another thing we can do is we can take a look at the HTTP source and see if there's anything relevant in here. There usually isn't, but sometimes there can be. So okay, so it doesn't look like there's anything super important in here. So let's take a look at the other Nikto scan against port 8080. And it didn't. Oh, I did the wrong IP address. It should be 26. Okay. So we can also take a look at the web page on port 8080. Just really quick over here. So we're going to specify port 8080 on HTTP. So this is another Debian default page. So let's just check and see if there's anything in the source code. There probably isn't. Okay. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to run some GoBuster against these two web servers. So GoBuster is going to let us enumerate different directories that are available on the system, and I need to adjust this a little bit. So this one is going to be running against port 8080, and I'm going to run another one that is running against the default HTTP port. So this one is 8080. I'm going to run another one over here against the default port. Okay, and let's see if anything happens over here. So what were those other ports? Let me run my mmap command one more time. It came back really fast, so I'm just going to run nmap one more time. And then we're going to do a second round of nmap scanning. So this time I'm going to run it on the specific ports, 22 and 80 and 6379 and 8080. We're also going to run default scripts with -sc and version information with -sv. Okay, so let's see if the other scans are coming back. So we didn't find anything on port 8080. I'm going to provide, I'm going to look for some extensions in this next pass. So I'm going to look for PHP files, and we're going to look for TXT files, and we're going to look for HTML files. And we're also going to be, so this one is against 8080. This time we're going to be running GoBuster looking for file extensions. Same thing with this one on the default HTTP port, PHP, HTML, and TXT. Okay. So let's take a look at the Nmap. So Nmap found port 22, typical stuff. Port 80 is just the default Debian page. Port 8080 is also a default Apache Debian page. And I think what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking advantage of Redis over here in order to break into the system. So how do we pen test against Redis? It's been a while, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to HackerFrogs. So HackerFrogs over here, I'm going to look for Redis. Okay, so there's an article over here for pen testing Redis. All right, let's take a look. All right, so we're probably going to be putting this down in a couple of minutes because I want a couple of minutes to prep for my class and take a drink. But if you're enjoying all this, you please feel free to follow the channel or subscribe on YouTube. So basic information, what is this? So Redis is an open source in-memory data structure store used as a database, cache, and message broker. By default, Redis uses a plain text-based protocol, but you have to keep in mind that it can also implement SSL and TLS. Interesting. So we can do some enumeration, some automated tools that can help obtain info from a Redis instance over here. Nmap script Redis info. All right. And we also have a Metasploit script, a Metasploit tool rather, auxiliary scanner Redis server. So let's run this one from Nmap. So the server is 10.2.0.2.26. Okay, so we've got some information here. So we've got 64-bit architecture, version information, bind addresses, client connections, which is our IP address right here. So I'm wondering if this version over here is vulnerable to exploits or not. We can do some search exploit, and we can look for Redis, and let's see what shows up. So we've got replication code execution from Metasploit. We've got unauthenticated code execution from Metasploit. Notably, all of these are for versions 5.0 and 4.0 and below. So I don't think this is a valid path because we're dealing with version 6.0, so a version over version 6. So I think we're out of luck in that department. But over on HackerFrogs, we also have the scanner for Redis server. So we have what we can also try is we can try using the Redis CLI, and I do believe the Redis CLI is it's installed by default on Kali Linux. So let's Redis CLI. Yes, so Redis CLI is available to us. So we could manually log into the Redis server if it has anonymous logins enabled, or if we're able to guess the username and password combination. So unfortunately, it seems that we've run out of time right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to start our next class. Okay, so everybody, thank you very much for watching as usual. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to move on into our next class, which is Linux Operations Session 5. Okay, so everybody, see you in a little bit. All right, everybody, we're back from our break, and we're going to be moving on into our second HackerFrogs session of the day. So we're going to be doing HackerFrogs Linux session number 5. Let me grab the file that I need to do to teach that. So over here. Okay, so this is HackerFrogs After School Linux Basics Part 5. So we're doing some wrap up today. So we're going to be covering a few commands that we didn't have time to cover in our previous sessions. Most notably, we're going to be talking about some text editing over on Linux. So before we start, hey there, HackerFrogs. This is the 5th Intro to Linux OS Operations workshop, and in the previous workshop we learned about the following Linux commands. We talked about the help flag. The -- help flag can be used as a part of any command to return a relatively brief explanation as to how to use the command. We learned about the cp command. The cp command copies files from one directory to another. The first argument is the file to be copied, and the second argument is the directory the file is to be copied to. We talked about the mv command, which is used in a similar fashion to the cp command, except that the original file will remain in its original directory. Oh, the original file will not remain in its original directory. This command is also used for modifying the names of files. So we talked a little bit about Linux file permissions, and each file in the Linux file system has different read, write, and execute permissions, depending on whether the user is 1. The file user, 2. Part of a certain group, or 3. Any other user. We talked a little bit about noteworthy Linux file directories, such as the /etc directory, where system files are stored, the var directory, where log files and database files are stored, the root directory, the home directory of the root user, and typically the folder with the most secure access, the /tmp directory, where all files are deleted on a regular basis, and the home directory, where individual user account files are stored. So let's access a Linux console for our lesson today. So we're going to be using the machines over at bellard.org JS Linux, and this is a great little service on the web, and it lets us access a Linux virtual machine. Let me just I've got too many tabs open. Okay, so let's go over to JS Linux. And if you want to follow along, you can access the link that I'm providing in the chat. This will go to the JS Linux virtual machine, and it's going to take. So once you've initialized the machine, you should see this prompt right here: root at localhost, and that means that we now have access to the terminal. So like any other Linux environment, we can use all of our typical Linux commands, such as ls and whoami and clear. And there are a couple of files that are in this home directory by default, which is bench.py and hello.c. So now that we're here, we're going to be learning about a few new Linux commands in this workshop. Oh, not this one, but this one. So we're going to be talking a little bit about terminal text editors. So from time to time, we're going to need to write new files or modify existing ones, and in order to do so, we're going to need to use Linux text editors. So this is an example of the Nano text editor, and the Nano text editor is actually very easy to use. It's relatively easy to use compared to some other text editors. So two commonly installed text editors on Linux systems are the Nano text editor and the Vim text editor. So Nano is the more straightforward and user-friendly of the two text editors, and what we're going to do right now is we're going to test drive Nano a little bit. So go over to your JS Linux, and what I want you to do is I want you to use the following command. We're going to nano test.txt. So this is going to be a test text file, and when you hit the enter button, the nano text editor is going to load up. Any minute now. Okay, great. All right, so this is the interface for the nano text editor. You can actually see, if you go down to the bottom of the screen, you can actually see the different keyboard shortcuts we can use inside of here. So you actually don't need to know too many keyboard shortcuts when you're just starting out. The only keyboard shortcut you need to know is how to save and exit, which I'm going to demonstrate in just a little bit. But meanwhile, inside of the text editor here, this is very user-friendly. You just type in the text, and you can. So, for example, you can just start writing. This is an example of text written in the nano editor. Nano editor. Okay, and you can press enter. You can put stuff on different lines. This is the second line I'm writing. Amazing. Simply astounding. Okay. All right. So when we're finished typing in whatever we want to type into the text editor, what we can do is we can save out this. We can save this to the file, and we do that by using the Control X keyboard shortcut. So we can see here, this keyboard shortcut is actually exit, but when we do the Control X keyboard shortcut, it's going to ask us if we want to save the modified buffer, which is basically save whatever we've written to this file. We want to answer Y for yes, so just type Y, and then it's going to ask you the file name you want to write to. By default, it's going to be the same as whatever you typed in nano to open it up. So you just have to hit enter, and that's going to save the file. So after the file is saved, this is a little bit big. I'm going to make this a little smaller. Okay, so after you've finished, when you do the ls command to see what's in the directory, you should see that that the test.txt file is here. So when you read the file using the cat command, you're going to see whatever you wrote inside the text editor appears over here. Okay, great. So this is how you would modify files inside of Nano. So if you wanted to further edit this file, you can do that very easily by just typing in nano and then the name of the file you want to edit. If the file doesn't exist when you use nano, it's going to create the file. But if the file already exists, it's going to let you modify the file. So we run this again, and then the contents of the file are here. We can keep on editing over here, and we can just add whatever we want. Whatever we want to add, we can add. As many exclamation points as we like, and then we can save it again. So to save the file, remember it's Control X to exit. It's going to ask us if you want to save the modified buffer. Type Y for yes, and then hit enter to save as the same file name. Okay? So we see here test.txt, and if we were to cat it out, then whatever we've modified is still here and it was saved. Great. Okay, so let's learn about the other text editor program inside of Linux. So the Vim text editor. So Vim is a more complicated text editor, but it is favored by Linux power users who can make use of its advanced features. So Vim isn't something that I've really taken the time to explore, but there are a lot of people out there who are very passionate about the Vim text editor, or in the Vi text editor that came before it. So let's see. So the text here says, in the Vim text editor, before you can type anything, you have to type the letter I. To save a file, you have to hit the escape button and then type :WQ. So this is the most important thing you need to learn about the Vim text editor is that you can save and exit with :WQ. So I think W stands for write, and then Q stands for quit. And we have to type colon in the other mode before we can start, we can give any other commands. So let's demonstrate this. So over at JS Linux, and if you need a link to any of the websites or services we're looking at, please let us know. Okay, so let's try editing the test.txt file with Vim. So we would type Vim and then test.txt, and this is going to let us edit the file using Vim. Okay, so the contents of the file are here, but we're currently in. So there are two modes to Vim. I think the default mode is called edit mode, and the other mode is called insert mode. So in order to actually edit the file inside of Vim, we have to first type the letter I, and then here it'll say insert, and then we can start editing the file. So we're going to add to the end of the line over here, I'm editing in Vim. Smiley face, smiley face. Smiley face, smiley face. Okay. So after we're done with whatever we want to type inside of the editor, we have to hit the escape key. And when we hit the escape key, then we'll no longer see the word insert at the bottom here. And then we can give the command colon and then W and Q. And after we hit enter, it's going to write the file over here. It says whatever file name, something number of bytes written over here. And when we cat out the file, then we see that everything we've added is over here. So just remember, this is the most important part about using Vim. If you can't get out of the program, then it's a big problem. So all you need to do, you don't even need to edit a file. Clear, clear, clear. Just type in Vim to open up the program. Remember that in order to get out of this, you just need to, well, actually it tells you here. So type this to exit, :Q, enter to exit. But if you want to save the file, you have to type :WQ or QW to quit. Okay? So practice quitting out of Vim. It's a very important thing to know. So it's colon and then WQ or just Q to quit out. There are several programs inside of Linux that use kind of a Vim-like command or a Vim-like syntax. So sometimes when you're stuck in a program, you might have to do :WQ to quit out or :Q to quit out. This is something that that you should know because otherwise you're gonna you won't look very smart if you're not able to quit out of Vim. Okay. All right. So let's cover a few more commands aside from text editors. So there's also the vi text editor. So on very old Linux systems, both Vim and Nano are going to be absent, but Vim's predecessor, which is called vi, may be present, and its basic functions are very similar to Vim. So just keep that in mind that on very old Linux distributions, you're going to be using vi as a text editor instead of Vim or Nano. So we already talked about this. So we already talked about downloading files using wget, but it's a very important thing to know that wget can be used to download files. Next, we'll talk about managing processes. So processes are basically commands that are running on the system, And we can retrieve a list of processes that are running on the system by using the PS command. So PS stands for process. If we go over to JS Linux over here, we can run PS and it's going to show us the running processes. So there's the shell, and the shell is actually the shell, the interface that we're using right now, and it's on PID process ID 47. And we have this PS, which is what we just ran, and that has a process ID of 145. When you're dealing with processes, you should keep track of the process ID, because if we want to eliminate any of them, we need to know the process ID. So for example, if we were to run a command that's going to run for a long time, such as grep-r, actually no, we'll run find. So find in the entire file system the name the HackerFrogs. This is going to look in the entire file system for a file that is called the HackerFrogs. It's not going to find anything, so it's going to take a long time. Well, it's not going to find anything, and it's going to take a long time. We're going to run this as a background process by using the ampersand over here. And we can actually find, so it tells us the process ID when we run the command. If we run PS to take a look at the running processes, we can see that the find program is running as a process on process ID 146. So what we can do is we can kill the process. If there's a process you won't want anymore, you can just use the kill command to delete the process, to stop running it. And you just need the process ID. So we run kill on that process ID, and when we run process again, PS, we see that that this one has been terminated because we used the kill command on it. All right. So if we know the PID of a process, we can remove it with the kill command. So another thing that we can do is we can check if certain programs exist with the which command. The which command can be used to check where a program is located. If there's no output, it's possible that this program is not installed. So if we can go back to our JS Linux, and we're looking for the netcat program, we would type which netcat, and the system is going to respond no netcat. So no netcat exists. Oh, okay. So sometimes netcat is called NC as well, so we can try. Okay, so netcat is not installed, but it's known by the name NC. So it's going to tell us where this is installed. So it's installed in the bin directory over here. And for instance, if we were to look for another common program, maybe which PS. So let's see where the PS command is located in the system. So that's located in /bin/ps. So another thing that we can check is, let's check if there's an unusual program on the system. So we can check which nmap. So nmap is a networking tool that can tell us which ports are open on certain systems. It's probably not installed on this JS Linux machine. So it says no nmap installed in here. Okay. All right, so that was the which command. So we'll talk a little bit about installing new programs. So although different Linux distributions use different methods of installing programs, Debian-based distributions such as Ubuntu and Kali Linux use the apt program to install new programs. So for example, if you're using Kali Linux and you wanted to install the Tor program, you would use the apt program and then with install and then the name of the program you want to install. So we're not going to demonstrate this because it can get a little bit messy, but just keep that in mind when you want to install new programs. If you have Kali Linux So if you have access to some other distribution of Linux that you can play around with, you can go ahead and go and try installing new programs on that. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about networking commands now, such as ifconfig. So the ifconfig command is used to return networking information for the system, which includes its IP address and MAC address. So this is very important if you want to do any networking related operations. If we go over to JS Linux and we run ifconfig, then it's going to get us our network information. So we've got our internet address over here, and we've got our Ethernet. Where are we? I think this is the MAC address right here, and some other networking information as well. So this is useful if we want to do networking, if we want to do other networking operations, and we want to know what the IP address is for the current machine that we're running, that they're running on. Okay, so another thing that you can do on Linux is you can start your own simple HTTP server. So we can use Python to serve files to the internet with a simple HTTP server module, although it should be confined to local network use. So I don't think we're allowed to run this particular HTTP server on the JS Linux machines, because doing so would probably be a security risk. But this is how you would do it. So you would do Python -m. Actually, so this is, I want to make sure that there's Python on the system first of all. Oh, no, well, I mean, obviously there is. It's been Python, and I'm pretty sure that this is Python version 3. So we can just run Python ---- version, and it's going to tell us that it's running Python 3.9. Okay, great. So if we wanted to run the Python HTTP server, it would be Python -m, and then it would be http.server, and we would run it on port 80. So this might not go through, because if they're keeping track of security on these JS Linux boxes, it's not going to let us do this. So this is, it's thinking. All right. Oh, it is serving. It's serving HTTP on port 80. Interesting. Okay. So if we were to do this and we had the IP address of this machine, we would be able to access this via HTTP and download files in the same directory over here. But yeah, let's not do that. There's also this other networking command we can do called netstat. And the netstat command is used to retrieve network connections. So by default, there shouldn't be any, actually there might be some network connections on these JS Linux machines. Over here, we can check netstat. Okay, so it looks like there isn't any network connections over here. But netstat is usually run with a bunch of flags and switches. The most common of which is this one. And we see that there is port 68, a UDP port 68 open on this machine over here. And that is a dynamic host something DHCP. This is the service that assigns IP addresses to machines on the network. Okay, so let's move on. So let's talk about sudo, the super command. So the sudo command can be added to any other command, and it allows the command to be executed in the context of the root user. So you're gonna hear this a lot when you're dealing with cybersecurity, because what cybersecurity people like to do is they like to gain root access by abusing, stuff like the sudo command. But in order to test out what the sudo command can do, there's let me grab my notes. So we're looking at HackerFrogs after school, and we're looking at some session notes, and we're looking at, this is batch 1, Linux session 5. Okay, so this file over here, what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at this GitHub file, and at the bottom of the file over here, there's going to be this section here labeled "Making a new user in JS Linux," and there's this code over here. We actually used this code in the previous session, but we're going to be using it again. So what you want to do is you want to click on this button right here, which is going to copy all of the commands, and then you want to go back to your JS Linux. So back on your JS Linux, you want to right click and then select paste, and that's going to paste in this series of commands over here. I want you to hit enter after that, and what this is going to do is it's going to add a user to the system called HackerFrog, and HackerFrog is going to have a password equal to frogpass, and after we've added the user to the system, if we were to cat the etc password file, which tells us about all the users on the system, we're going to see that the HackerFrog user has been added to the bottom of this file. So we can start messing around with some sudo commands. So in order to do that, we need to use the su command to switch users over to HackerFrog. So su space HackerFrog. And now we see that we are the HackerFrog user. If we ask who am I, it says we are HackerFrog. So let's move over to our home directory. So cd by itself, and we see that we're in /home/HackerFrog. All right. So now that that's done, let's read a little bit more about the sudo command before we start messing around with the sudo command inside of JS Linux. So the sudo command can be added to any other command, and it allows the command to be executed in the context of the root user. And remember that the root user on a Linux system is the user with the admin user, and is basically the user with the most access on the system. Sudo needs to be used whenever we try to access or modify system files or directories. So, for example, in this case, we're trying to read the shadow file where all the password hashes for the users are found, and it says permission denied because we don't have sufficient permissions to read this. So we can take a look over on JS Linux. So we're to ls-la, and we're going to look at the shadow file. That's not how you spell shadow. And it says that it belongs to root, and there are no permissions for the shadow file, meaning that we can't read it. So strangely enough, there are also no read permissions for the root user, which is interesting. But what we can do is we can try to read it using the sudo command. So if we were to just try to cat the shadow file, it's going to say permission denied because we're not the file owner, and there's no read permissions for other users on the system, as we see over here. If we were to do sudo cat etc shadow, we trust that you have received the usual lecture from the local system administrator. It usually boils down to these three things. Number 1, respect the privacy of others. 2, think before you type. And 3, great power comes great responsibility. So this is a typical message when you try to run sudo on Linux systems. But yeah, basically when you're using the sudo command, you should know exactly why you don't have access to this command unless you use sudo. And it's going to ask you for the password for your user if they're able to run sudo. Remember that in the HackerFrog user's case, the password is frog pass, FROGPASS. Then hit enter. And we see we're able to read the shadow file. And the shadow file is very interesting because it has the password hashes for all of the users on the system. So if you were able to access this as a malicious user, you could potentially crack the password hashes and get the password, get the original passwords for all sorts of users. So this is an example of a password hash right here for the root user. And this is an example of a password hash for the HackerFrog user over here, which is this string right here up until the colon. Okay, so what we're trying to illustrate is that whenever you use the sudo command, because you don't have permissions to run whatever command it is, there's a reason. And the reason's probably because whatever you're trying to access is sensitive or belongs to higher access user. So generally, only system administrator accounts should be allowed to use sudo with all commands. So for example, if you're running a Kali Linux virtual machine, then your default user, which is called Kali, is going to be able to run sudo with all commands as the root user. And this is normal because the Kali user account on Kali Linux machines is an administrator level account. So, but some systems have users who are able to use sudo with specific commands from it for some reason or another. So basically, if you ever try to run a command as a regular user and you see the permission denied message, this is probably because you can usually retry that command with sudo to execute it successfully. So sudo is basically the command that lets you do things that you normally wouldn't be able to do. It's the super user do command. So if we need to use sudo, we should always try to understand why we need to use it. So this is a command right here that people like to meme on a lot. It's the remove everything in your file system command over here. And usually you're not, if you're running as a regular user on the system and you're not running as root, you shouldn't be able to run this command unless you're using it with sudo. Because this command would delete everything from the file system. So usually if we need to use sudo, we should always try to understand why we need to use it, since it means we're interacting with sensitive files or directories. All right, so before we so what we're going to do now is we're going to play around with some scripts. So scripting in Linux is basically a single file in Linux that runs a bunch of commands one after another. So what we can do in JS Linux is we can start writing some scripts. So what we can do is we can do nano, and we're going to run this one thing called user. We're going to create a script file called user.enum.sh. So all of the script files in Linux they usually have the sh file extension to identify it as a script file. So we're going to create this inside of nano over here. And to identify a file as a script file, we usually use this header. So hashtag and then exclamation point, which otherwise is known as bang. And we usually indicate which command is used to execute the file, which is usually /bin/bash. So this header at the top indicates that this is a Linux script file, or a bash script file, they're also called. And then whatever is inside of this file is going to be executed when the script is executed. So let's make the view a little larger, because I'm afraid of text looking too small. And what we're going to do is we're going to run a bunch of successive commands with the script. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at our HackerFrogs GitHub page, which once again I'm going to link to. And in the GitHub page, there's this system enumeration script over here. So what I want you to do is I want you to click on this button right here, copy, and this is going to copy all the commands in the script. Okay? So just click on that and then go back to your JS Linux. In your JS Linux, I want you to delete that bin bash, and I want you to right click and select paste. So when you do that, oh, the format seems to be messed up over here. Okay, so we've got bin bash, and then what this script is going to do is it's going to run the following commands. So first of all, it's going to echo your username is who am I, and then we're going to put this on a separate line, and we're going to put this on a separate line, and this on a separate line. Okay, so it should be formatted like this. So the echo command in this case is basically going to serve as a kind of print to the console. And the first command is going to be echo your username is who am I. So it echoes out this, but this who am I between these backticks, and the backtick is the key that is to the left of the one key on the keyboard. So whatever is between these two backticks, this backtick and this backtick, is going to be interpreted as the output of whatever command is in the center. So in the center is the who am I command. So whatever is the output of the who am I command, so I think we're the HackerFrog user right now, the output of this command is going to be your username is HackerFrog, because HackerFrog is the output of the who am I command. So the next line is the name of this host is hostname. So hostname is another command that that is used on Linux to return the name of the computer that is being used, the name of the host. And once again, hostname is between these backticks over here, which means that the output of this command, the hostname command, is going to be put in this place. And the next command is echo. These are the users on the system with shell login. Shell login basically means they can log in and they have shell access or terminal access to the system. And then we're going to run this command right here. We're going to read the etc password file, which has all of the usernames, but we're going to use grep to omit any lines that have the no login output in them. So we're going to save this file, and this file basically is going to run these 4 commands when we run the script file. So we're going to save. It's going to be Control X. Let me make the text smaller. Okay, so it's going to ask us if we want to save the modified buffer. Press Y for yes, and then file name to write. Hit enter. Okay. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Okay, now we can see, hopefully. Okay, so we have the user underscore enum.sh file script in here, and in order to run a file that is in your current directory, you would usually need to do // and then the name of the file you want to run. The problem is it says permission denied. So permission denied means that, well, you might think that you have to run it with sudo, but actually this is not the case. The case is because any file that you create by default doesn't have write permissions. Sorry, it doesn't have execute permissions. So these scripts over here are executable. If you run the script, you have to run it as an executable file. So if you do lsla, you see here that the user underscore enum.sh file does not have execute permissions, so there's no X in any of these columns. But what we can do is we can give this file execute permissions with the following command. So it's chmod plus X. So chmod, I spelled that incorrectly. Chmod is change mode. This is the command used to change file permissions in Linux. And we're adding the execute permission to whatever file. So we're going to add this to user-enum.sh. After we do this, we see that the user-enum file is now executable. It's got execute for all of these categories here. And if we run the file command on this file right here, user-enum.sh, it'll tell us that this is a born again shell script ASCII text executable because it's identified it as such because of the file extension, but more importantly, because of this header right here, which is hashtag !bin bash. This is how the system recognizes this as a shell script. So we can run the shell script by doing // and then the name of the file. When we run this, these 1, 2, 3, 4, these 4 commands are going to run. They're going to execute. Okay, so when we run the shell script, first of all, it says your username is HackerFrog. So it took who am I and it output that as HackerFrog. The name of this host is localhost. It took the host name command and it used this output over here. And then it echoes, these are the users on the system with shell login. These are the systems with shell login. It reads the password file and it omits everything with no login. And we see that we've got root, we've got sync, we've got shutdown, we've got halt, Koji Builder, I don't know what that is, and we've got HackerFrog. So these are the accounts on the system with shell login. You'll notice that there's some services here that don't look like actual user accounts, and that's because services on the system need to have user accounts, even if they're not actual users on the system that do regular user activities. They still need to have a user account on the system. And this is the case in both Windows, in Linux and Windows, in fact. All right, so we executed this script and it was able to run all of these commands over here. We're going to, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to run a script in order to finish a CTF challenge over on picoctf, just to show that we can use scripting to achieve some other ends. So over at picoctf, we're going to go to the I think it's big zip. Let me grab over here. This is the big zip challenge. So what I want you to do is log into picoctf and then navigate to this challenge after you've opened up your web shell. So in picoctf, we're going to open up our web shell. So we just need to click on this button right here, web shell, and then we need to put the web shell in the big configuration, which is this button right here, pop out web shell terminal. So just click on that, and your terminal should be in its own browser tab, which is much larger than the default web shell. Okay? All right, so everybody, if you managed to log into your web shell, please let us know in the chat by typing in the chat, web shell is up, smiley face. So after you've done that, please go over to the Big Zip challenge. Big Zip over here. All right, so this challenge over here usually has us download the file and then look for the flag. But what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate how we can use scripting to solve this challenge. Okay, so over at our web shell, actually no, wait. Over at the HackerFrogs GitHub over here, we have this bash script. So the bash script, this is going to automate the entire solving of the Big Zip challenge. So these are the commands we're going to run with the bash script. We're going to go over here and click on this, and that's going to copy the commands. Afterwards, we can go over to the web shell, and in the web shell, we're going to use nano to create this script. It's going to be bigzip.sh. So nano space bigzip.sh. So now we are inside of the nano text editor. We can paste in the commands that we copied. So paste this in, and this time the formatting did not screw up. Great. All right, so once again, we see that we identify this script file with hashtag exclamation point. So in Linux circles, we call this the shebang. The shebang meaning that this is a hash and this is a bang. So they call this the shebang, this combination. So shebang / bin / bash. This means that that it's a bash script. Next, the next command is make directory bigzip. So we make a directory and then we enter the directory with cd. The next thing we do is we download the file associated with the challenge using wget over here. And then we unzip the file. And then we look for the picoctf string, the picoctf flag string using grep. So grep our pico dot. So we're going to unzip the big zip file, and then we're going to look for the picoctf string. And then we're going to, after that, we're going to back out of this directory with cd ... for parent level directory. And then we're going to delete the big zip directory. So we create a big zip directory, we unzip, we download the file, we unzip the file, we look for the flag, and then we back out and delete the directory we created. So this series of commands is going to complete the whole challenge in one command. All right, so to save this out, we're going to Control X. It's going to ask us if you want to save the modified buffer. Y for yes. Hit enter to save the file. So remember that this file is created without execute permissions. Actually, just ls-l. So this file is created without execute permissions over here, bigzip.sh. We need to give it execute permissions with the chmod command. chmod plus x, and then bigzip.sh. Run that. And then you'll see that the bigzip.sh file is now executable. If we run file on this, it now says it's a born again shell script, a bash script. It consists of ASCII text and it's executable. All right, so the last thing we need to do to finish the challenge is to run the script. So we're going to do /bigzip.sh. When we run the script, it's going to run all those commands that we specified in the script. So this is unzipping all the files from the zip file we downloaded. This is the flag right here. But if you take a look at what is in your directory, the big zip directory that we specified inside of the script file is not here because it was deleted by the script. So let's take a look at the contents of the script one more time. So it made the directory, it entered the directory, it downloaded the file, unzipped the file, it looked for the flag, it backed out of the directory, and then it deleted the directory. So this is the use for script files. You can if there are certain operations you want to do over and over again, or if you want to automate some actions by putting them in a script file, this is how you can do it. And in fact, there are several challenges in PicoCTF that benefit a lot from automation, but we might cover that another time. All right, so before we finish off, let's talk about everything we talked about in today's session, because this is the last Linux workshop. So we talked about terminal text editors. So we learned about terminal text editors, which are used for word processing in CLI environments. Remember, CLI stands for Command Line Interface. Two commonly installed text editors on Linux systems are called Nano and Vim. We talked about downloading files using wget. This is something we do all the time in Linux. We learned how to manage processes on the system with the ps command. So ps is going to show all of the processes on the system. And after looking at processes, you can stop them with the kill command. We use the ifconfig command to look up our system's networking information. And we used Python to create a simple HTTP server to serve files. We use netstat to determine our system's active network connections. And we learned about the sudo command, which lets us run commands as the super user, otherwise known as root. All right, so let's see. In the next workshop, we're going to be starting a new subject, programming. So we're going to be programming using Python starting in the next session, which is going to be happening on, what day is it today? It's Wednesday, so it's going to be on Friday. All right, so I'm not going to leave you there. There's a couple of things we can talk about before we end today's session. And in fact, if you want to explore more about Linux, there's a very good course on Hack the Box Academy. So Hack the Box is a very popular cybersecurity education platform. And got too many tabs. Okay, so Hack the Box Academy. You can sign up for the website over here. And I'm just going to show you an example of, let's see, I think I've got a link. I've got a link for the Hack the Box Academy Linux Fundamentals course over here. So I'm going to copy this link and supply it to everybody in chat. If you want to take a look at it, it is over here. And I can give you a glimpse at what the course consists of. So it's a free course. Let's see. Let me log into Hack the Box Academy. Hack the Box. Okay, I need to log in to my Hack the Box account. Oh, I need to log in. Okay. I think this was my email. And let me grab my password. Where's my password? Okay, so Hack the Box. Okay, so this should be the password. Okay, and let's see. Let's search for that module. It's Linux. Linux fundamentals. It was down there. Okay, so this is the Linux fundamentals course. I think I've already unlocked it. And let's make this nice and big so you can see what's going on. So there's all these sections over here. Extremely big on Twitch. Hello, yo, how is it going? How is it going? We're just finishing up our last Linux workshop over here. And hey, let's celebrate the end of the Linux workshop with a little bit of all the things, which is hack all, drink all the booze and hack all the things.
This one's dedicated to all the hackers. Yo.
All right, extremely big. Yeah. Hope you're having a good night. And we're going to be moving on to some hacking content after this. But we're just taking a look at the contents of this Hack the Box Linux course over here. So we've got our Linux file structures and distributions. So this is a very in-depth course, and it's going to take a long time to it's going to take quite a few hours to finish. It says here it'll take about 6 hours to finish this course, but it's very thorough, and it talks about all sorts of different aspects of Linux. And Deal ENC is now HackerFrog. Thank you very much, and welcome to the HackerFrogs. Extremely Big says I did a similar one on Try Hack Me. Yeah, I think there's let me take a look at the one on Try Hack Me as well. But this one is a very long course. I think this one's more extensive than the one on Try Hack Me. Of course, I could be wrong. Let me just go over to Try Hack Me real quick. The problem is that most of the Linux most of the Linux courses over at Try Hack Me are paid now. So the Linux fundamentals are not free anymore, but the one over at Hack the Box is free. So if I were to search for Linux and I were to sort by free rooms, then only Linux Fundamentals 1 appears. So if you're trying to learn more about Linux using TryHackMe, they put the other Linux fundamentals rooms behind a paywall, which is kind of unfortunate. All right, so everybody, thank you very much to everybody who participated in the Linux OS operations course. Hopefully, you know a little bit more about Linux and are a little bit more familiar, a little bit less hesitant to start typing on the Linux terminal. And we're going to be back on Friday, and we're going to be starting our Python programming basics course. I hope to see you there. But we're going to be shifting over to our other content, and the other content for today is going to be covering some hacking, and we're going to be hacking against the VulnyX, the VulnyX platform over here that I'm providing to everybody in chat. We have a box downloaded and ready to go, and it's called Shock. So it's the 13th machine on the website, and we've already downloaded it and put it on our network, and we're going to be doing some hacking against it. All right, so for this portion, I'm going to put on some music because why not? And I think I'm going to play some FTL soundtrack. So to anybody who's played FTL, it's called Faster Than Light. It's a roguelike game that came out about 10 years ago. It's a pretty old game, but it's a pretty good game, and the soundtrack is actually really nice. So I'm going to start playing some of that. Let's do that. Let's start from the beginning. Ah, that's some good music. Okay. All right. So if anybody has anybody thinks that the music is too loud, let me know and I'll turn the music down. Or if you want me to turn it up, you can also turn it up. Extremely Big asks, what's this site VulnyX? Well, that's kind of loud. Let me turn that down. Okay. So the site over here is a list. This site over here is VulnyX, and this is a platform where you can download virtual machines to hack against. Basically, what you do is you find a machine that is at a suitable difficulty level. They're color-coded, so this cyan color is low difficulty boxes, and then easy boxes, medium boxes, the red ones are hard, and I think there's 103 virtual machines that you can download and test against total. So what you do is you download the virtual machine and then you put it on your own network and then you can hack against it. This is very similar to other platforms like Vuln or hackmyvm.eu, but it's not exactly like TryHackMe or Hack the Box, because you don't have to log into their infrastructure to get started on these challenges. So this challenge over here is called Shock. I've downloaded the VM and deployed it to my network. So I'm going to start it up right now. So I'm going to start up the virtual machine, and I'm going to show you guys. This is the virtual machine booting up over here. Okay. So we see that the machine is deployed, and it actually has been assigned an IP address on my network. And in this case, it is 10.0.2.25. If the machine didn't display the IP address, we could probably search for it on our network using Nmap. But in this case, we don't need to. All right, so let's start our enumeration. So to start the enumeration, I'm going to go over to my terminal, and the terminal is a bit cluttered now. Let's start cleaning up. Okay. So the first thing we like to do when we enumerate a new machine is we like to run an Nmap scan. So it's going to be Nmap and then -vv/-p-t4 and then the IP address. I think the IP address for this machine is 25. Let me check one more time. Yeah, it's 25. Okay. So what does this command do? So we're using Nmap, and we're scanning with very verbose output, and we're scanning all the ports. So that's indicated by this -p-. We're running it with 4 threads, which is my preferred speed for running Nmap, because it's not too fast and it's not too slow. Let's see what ports appear when we scan this machine. Okay, so we only have 2 ports. We have port 80 and we have port 22. So we can run another Nmap scan that includes those 2 ports. So we're going to include port 22 and we're going to include port 80. And additionally, we're going to run it with these additional flags, -S capital C and -S capital V. These two switches over here are going to run default scripts against any services that we find, and -S capital V is going to return versioning information for the services that we find. So let's run this. Okay, so this is what returned over here. So we've got port 22, which is running OpenSSH, so this is fairly normal. And then port 80 over here is running Apache HTTPD, so this is an Apache server. The first thing we can do is we can, because there's port 80 available on this box, we can run a Nikto scan. Nikto is a web app vulnerability scanner, and we can use it to scan against web pages on web servers to see if they have any common web app vulnerabilities, and we can enumerate other web app information or web server information from them. So we're going to run Nikto. And it tells us some information over here. So it tells us the web server information. So we've got Apache 2.4.38, which is a Debian version. So you can tell that there's that the underlying web server is running some sort of Debian Linux. So what else we see here is we've got some options, and it tells us which HTTP methods are allowed on the system. So there's get and post and options. These are all fairly normal. So what we can do next is we can do some manual enumeration of this website. So over here, we're just going to copy our IP address, and then go over to our web browser. In the web browser, we're going to I think we can get rid of this web shell, web terminal, and we can just manually navigate to the web page. It just says "Hello World." That's great. Okay. So now that we're here, what we can do is we can take a look at the source, at the HTTP source for this web page, and there's basically nothing here. Okay. All right. So we could try some other things. We could try looking for robots.txt on it. On this website, it's not here because it wasn't reported by Nikto. Nikto usually finds stuff like that. So the next step we can do is we can do some directory busting. So directory busting is looking for all available directory paths on a web server by sending it a list of directories and seeing what comes back. So in order to do that, we're going to do GoBuster. So let's see, we have to make sure that it is the right IP address. So GoBuster, what it's going to do is it's going to take a word list and it's going to compare the word list, use the word list and send these requests for directories and or files using whatever's in the list. So this list that I usually use is called directory list 2.3 medium.txt. It's a common word list file that you can find on Kali Linux. So we're going to run GoBuster in directory busting mode and also look for these file extensions over here. So there's HTML and PHP and TXT. So let's see if anything comes up from this. Okay, so we've got our index.html, all right. So because we're running the virtual machine and our Kali Linux machine on the same network, the results of GoBuster are going to come back very quickly because there's no latency between machines on the same network. But nonetheless, because we're checking against so many different file extensions, it's basically going 4 times as slow as it usually would because we included 3 file extensions to check for. So far, the only legitimate file that we found is index.html. And if we don't find anything with this GoBuster scan, then we're going to have to resort to some extreme testing that we don't usually do. So namely, what we're going to do if we don't find anything is we're going to start scanning UDP ports. And scanning UDP ports is usually something we don't like to do against these kind of boxes because UDP scans are very, very slow, and not very reliable. But because the Nmap scan, let's see, where is the tab with my Nmap scan? Oh, this was the tab with my Nmap scan. Because the Nmap scan came back and only returned port 22 and port 80, we're gonna have to do Nmap in UDP mode. And because I don't do this very often, I'm gonna ask ChatGPT how to do it. Hold on. How do we use Nmap to scan UDP ports? Scanning the top 100 UDP ports. Okay, so to scan the top 100 UDP ports using Nmap, you can use the following command. SU top ports 100 target. Okay. All right. So let's copy this down and then let's go over to our terminal so we can Nmap this. I think to scan UDP ports, you have to use sudo to do so. So we're gonna include sudo on top of this. 25. We need to include our password for Kali Linux. Actually, you know what? Hold on. We're going to run this in very verbose so we can start getting results right away. Okay, so it's scanning 100 ports. This scanning usually goes pretty slow because UDP ports don't respond. They're not. Okay, let's ask ChatGPT why UDP port scans are very slow, because I need some education too. Why are UDP port scans so slow? Okay, so because, number one, UDP is a connectionless protocol, it doesn't establish a handshake like TCP does with three-way handshake. In a TCP scan, if a port is open, it responds quickly with a SYN-ACK packet. With UDP, however, there's no built-in acknowledgement system, making it hard to tell whether a port is open or not. UDP ports often do not respond if they're open, leaving the scanner to guess whether the port is open or just silently dropping the probes. Need for timeouts. Since open UDP ports usually don't send a response, Nmap or any UDP scanning tool must wait for a timeout period, determine whether no response means the port is open or just that the packet was lost. This waiting increases the total scan time significantly. ICMP rate limiting. If a UDP port is closed, it will often reply with a ICMP port unreachable message. However, many systems implement rate limiting on ICMP responses to prevent being overwhelmed by scan attempts. When ICMP rate limiting kicks in, it reduces the number of responses a scanner can receive per second, slowing the scan even further. So false positives in retrying, firewall and filtering, UDP payload size, strategies to increase. Oh, so how can we speed up UDP scans? You can reduce the timeout period by using the max retries and host timeout options, but this increases the risk of missing open ports. Using the T4 and T5, scan fewer ports. Okay. All right, so let's see if our scan of 100 ports has come back in the period that it took to read that. Okay, so we have our UDP scan, it came back. And this is just a big mess of output over here. So we've got DHC PS, we've got DHC PC, we've got possibly Open HTTP, we don't know. We've got RPC bind, NetBIOS. So we can't necessarily tell whether or not any of these are valid. But here's one thing. One thing that we know about this machine is that the name of the system is called shock, and that heavily implies to me that the system is vulnerable to some sort of shell shock vulnerability, which was a very famous Linux security exploit, and involved sending a specific string of commands in order to get command execution on a system. So because we see, oh sorry, I touched the mic. Because we see that the name of the system over here is shock, and we have ports 80 and ports 80 and port 22 open. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start researching about whether or not there's a way to attack HTTP with the shell shock vulnerability. So we just happen to have HackerFrogs over here, and let's ask HackerFrogs about the shell shock vulnerability. So shell shock. So we've got shell shock vulnerability that affects the widely used bash command line shell in Unix-based operating systems. Okay. Let's go over to this page. So we do a test. So most tests are based in echo something and expect that the string is returned in the web response. If you think a page may be vulnerable, search for all the CGI pages and test them. Okay, so CGI pages. So what we can do is we can use an nmap script to try to test for shell shock. So for example, I wonder if there's a shell shock script that I wonder if there's a shell shock script for Metasploit. Let me search for that. So, shell shock Metasploit. How to exploit shell shock on a web server using Metasploit. Okay, let's take a look at this article. Okay, let's make this nice and big. You could search for CGI with GoBuster. Oh, CGI. Oh, .cgi with GoBuster. Right. Hey, that's a good suggestion. Thank you very much, Extremely Big. Let's use GoBuster to look for CGI scripts. So we're going to look for .cgi. Okay, so this should come back in about 30 seconds or so, I'm guessing. And we're going to see if there are any CGI extensions on this web server. This server status.cgi didn't came back as 403, so it probably doesn't exist. Let's see if there is anything here. So we didn't server status.cgi. Server status.cgi. Well, maybe we could try this one. And from HackerFrogs, we said that there was this nmap script over here. I'm gonna copy that. And then we're going to adjust the IP address, 25, and we're going to provide the server status. Server status. Although I don't think that's a CGI. Hold on. I wonder if you can if you can just run this script without without a URL or a URI. It requires an argument. Okay, so not necessarily. I also wonder whether or not there's a method of. Okay, so first of all, let's give the UDP scan another try and then save the output. So nmap sudo nmap 0224. And what was that output again? Let me go to right, top ports. Top ports 100. Okay, and we're going to save this to /temp/ nmap udp udp.txt. Okay. All right. So the other thing I was wondering about is whether or not you can attack SSH using shell shock, because I remember you could attack a shell shock vulnerable server using some different protocols, not just HTTP. But let me. So how the shell shock vulnerability works? Okay. Apache. How Apache and CGI play into this? Apache is a cross-platform open source web server. Okay. CGI is a protocol designed to allow web servers to execute console-like programs. These programs, known as CGI scripts, often handle data from dynamic web pages and interact over HTTP. Okay. Metasploitable. Okay. Configure target. Oh, they're also shell script files. We could also try looking for shell script files using GoBuster. So back over here. We can look for file extension .sh files. Okay, so we're just going to leave that running for a little bit. Go into the temp directory. Okay, so let's see what is in here. Okay, so this hasn't come back yet. So we're just going to wait for that. Host seems down. If it's really up, but blocking our ping probes, try pn. Oh, it didn't. pn. Did I? I got this wrong. I used the wrong IP address again. Silly me. Okay, let's run this again. Okay. I gotta stop doing that. Okay, so we're looking for shell script files. Also came back negative. Could it be that I'm using the wrong directory list, and that's why it's not coming back? We can easily search for exploits by using the search command, the search shell shock, locate the Apache mod CGI bash and module, copy the location. Load the exploit by using the okay. What do we need to execute this attack? I kind of expected this to be easier. All right, so let's look up shell shock SSH. How to exploit shell shock over SSH. Okay, this might be this might be good. Let's take a look at this article. OpenSSH supports preventing SSH clients from preventing commands and spawning an interactive login shell. However, let's make this bigger. If the corresponding SSH server is vulnerable to shell shock, the client could bypass this restriction by exploiting the bug and running any command with the... Alright, so shell shock is a remote code execution bug in Bash. Okay. In the case of OpenSSH, we can turn off an interactive shell for a particular user or for all users. Without this restriction, any authorized user can log in via SSH and run commands within the scope of the logged in user. For instance, Okay, so what we're looking for is how to exploit shell shock over SSH. So for a successful shell shock exploit over SSH, certain conditions must be met. The server has a vulnerable bash version. The client has a valid SSH key. What? The client has a valid SSH key. The client user's login shell points to the same vulnerable bash. Otherwise, having a non-vulnerable version of bash or having a different shell as the login shell, such as ZSH, won't result in an exploit. The server restricts the user's SSH access using the force command or command directive, as shown earlier. Otherwise, the user can directly log in and access an interactive shell. Running an arbitrary command. Let's pass a command that shows the path of the user's login shell. Okay, so in this case, we need to have an SSH key, but we don't have an SSH key. So we can't use this vulnerability here. Okay, so next, let's take a look at the version of SSH that is being used. Not that SSH is usually vulnerable, but we could take a look. So let's nmap, and let's get the versioning information for port 22, and make sure we're scanning the right IP address. Okay, so it's OpenSSH 7.9. So let's search exploit this. So we'll search exploit for SSH for OpenSSH. And the version is 7.9. Write arbitrary files, 7.9. Username enumeration. Stack Overflow. Let's see. Let me look up whether or not OpenSSH has Okay, so OpenSSH, and it's shell shock and exploit. How can shell shock be exploited over SSH? The shell shock attack. Analysis of shell shock. Alright, let's take a look at those UDP ports. Huh, this time we only got this port 68. DHCP. I wonder if we can do shell shock through DHCP. Shell shock DHCP. Oh, okay. There's. Okay. Shell shock DHCP RCE proof of concept. Okay. Let's